Hello, everyone. Thank you for being present to this segment of our Ad Astra rubric. I'm very pleased. This is the first English segment of our program. The other one were in Italian, but I hope also our Italian friends that understand English can enjoy this program. And of course, all the English and American and people that speak English that are following our channels. So today the topic is very big. What is happening in America? This is a question many people are asking. Some people are asking this question because they like America. Some people they are asking because they don't like America. So we want to understand a little more, and I'm very happy to be joined by David Wemhoff. David Wemhoff, also an AB in government, Juris Doctor, JD, and a Master of Laws, LLM, in International and Comparative Law. Mr. Wemhoff practices law and taught business law, criminal law, and criminal procedure, American government, constitutional law, and state and local law at 2 universities. Mr. Wemhoff is the author of several works, including John Courtney Murray, Time, Life, and the American Proposition, which recounts American doctrinal warfare waged against the Roman Catholic Church during the Cold War. The book is now going into a new edition with the Wagon Wheel Press. He edits The American Proposition, is a Lay Dominican, and is a member of the Society of Catholic Social Scientists. So thank you, David, to be present to this program.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Aurelio. I greatly appreciate it. I'm honored that you would have me here on your program. And let's get to it. What's going on in America?
And so, the first question is exactly what is happening in America. So can you tell us, because we have this kind of turbulent times, we say after the election and then going to now, there are some things that people do not understand very well. Maybe you can tell us from your American perspective what is happening in your country.
Well, you either love America or you hate it. I mean, that's kind of the way it's broken down over time. One thing about America and about the American system of organization is that it's amazingly resilient. It's got a number of different shock absorbers, if you will, that are put in place. And these shock absorbers are basically contained in the First Amendment. That's freedom of speech, freedom of press. So you can say and talk about whatever you want. What those two freedoms do is it allows the governing interest, the powerful people, to get an idea of who the troublemakers are, to get an idea of what is actually going on in the minds of the people. It gives them an idea to shape the public view of what is going on. It also allows the public to know what the powerful people with the powerful private interests, or I call them the plutocrats, are thinking. An example is the virus and the vaccine. The efficacy of the vaccines are dropping precipitously. After 6 months, they're finding. The LA Times ran a story November 4th of this year that explained that drop of efficacy from about 86% to 13% in some cases. So that's a weather vane. That tells you what the plutocrats are thinking. They're going to see what the response is to that. And so what you have is a very flexible system that allows the various interests to communicate somewhat raucously with each other, but at the same time communicate with each other and try to keep from going to blows. Because the people who would suffer the most are going to be the plutocrats. It's the powerful private interests. It's the entrepreneurs. It's the guys who are able to make a lot of money and say, hey, we're offering you something for value. The financial capitalists, if you will. These are the guys who stand to lose a lot. So you've got a lot of resiliency in the American system. But what's actually going on? You're actually getting pushback to the agenda of the plutocrats. The little guy is pushing back. And the little guy is the worker. It's the guy who has faith. It's the Second Amendment people. It's the American people are pushing back, and the American people have a certain identity, and they have a certain understanding of history, and that identity and that understanding of history has grown over the years, and so that is what you're seeing going on. You're seeing a very serious pushback by the American people against the plutocrats. You're seeing it in places like the Virginia election, where the Democrat governor, was not elected simply because the parents don't want CRT. They want to control the education of their people, of their own children. That's a natural law principle. St. Thomas Aquinas talked about that in part one of the second part of the Summa Theologica. I believe it was question 94. He says one of the natural rights of parents is to teach their children. Another natural right is the right to life, to preserve life, to keep the unborn alive. That's another right. And that's so you see the pro-lifers also push back against the plutocracy. On one side, you got the plutocracy with its agenda, however that agenda, whatever that ideology may be from day to day. And on the other side, you got the American people with the natural order pushing back.
But let me join you on this because I have some kind of impression that is this. You talk about the resiliency of the American people, no? And I remember in 2016 when there was the election of Donald Trump. And to me, the election of Donald Trump was not a victory of the Republican Party, but was the victory of Donald Trump. I mean, it is like something on himself. I mean, it's something very special. And you know very well that indeed he has also many trouble with his own same party, the Republican Party. So how was possible that someone like Donald Trump, and I don't say this in any despairing way, I mean, someone very special like Donald Trump can overcome, I mean, all the obstacles that would be usually present to someone like him, you know, from the liberal, progressive. How is possible someone like Donald Trump can become a president and then you know, and then ending his presidency with this kind of how we call the fireworks? I don't know if it is a good term to define it.
Well, there are a number of reasons for that. One is that he spoke the language that Americans understand. He wasn't any sort of milquetoast sort of presentation. He spoke harsh, he spoke direct, he spoke true. It was plain talk. And the American people hearkened to that. And the American people agree with that. They also knew that while he was a billionaire and he's in the billionaire class, he's in the plutocrat class, he really wasn't one of them because he has an idea of America as a people and as a nation and as a society that's worthy of being maintained and kept alive and growing. And the plutocrats, for the most part, don't. For the most part, they see Americans to be exploited, and what we're seeing in the last year and a half to be destroyed.
Sorry, but this idea, you mentioned this idea, you think is really Donald Trump, or Trump is just a brand that allow other people to bring forward these ideas?
Well, I think Donald Trump benefits from that brand. He's a smart businessman, absolutely. But he was able to touch the heart of the American psyche and to get the Americans to hearken to him because he brought back this idea of what America was, especially what America was taught to the baby boomers. We understand this is the America. When he went to Mount Rushmore, I mean, that hearkened all the symbols of our national identity. There is a people. There is a people. Now, people use that, okay? That his identity, his work is being used by him and by other people too. And the question is, does he really have an image in his mind? Does he really have in his mind a goal, an end state where the American people are preserved and bettered? That's the question that remains. He's got an idea of what American identity is. He wants to preserve that. He has this idea of economic nationalism, which Steve Bannon also promoted, which hearkened to people, which they get. But does he really have a long-term view? And that long-term view would have to be putting limits on the mainstream media, on freedom of speech, freedom of press, and also on the plutocracy. You've got to limit these people. You've got to control these people because they're going to keep coming back.
But according to some people, they don't understand where it will finish Donald Trump and where will start the so-called white supremacist movement. And now I know that these are some kind of etiquette, some kind of brand that people also create to demonize people. And of course, there are also mad people in every kind of part of the political spectrum. What you can say about this involvement that people think that Trump has with this kind of neo-Nazi movements, we call it like that?
Well, you said it. They're demonizing Donald Trump. He said very effectively, he said, they're coming after me because they want to get to you. And that's correct. What's going on is you do have an American people, an American identity. Okay. And that was 1776. That's when the American people said, hey, we're different from the British. Okay. We may have a similar language, but we're different. So this is what the plutocrats don't want. They don't want an American identity. They don't want an Italian identity, Aurelio. They don't want a German identity. They want a European identity. This is George Soros and the World Economic Forum from January 2020. So they're going to attack everybody who looks like me and say, I'm a racist. And they're going to say, you're a racist. And they're going to want you to destroy yourself. That's what they want. And that's what CRT is about. And that is what the plutocracy wants. And they work through agents to do this. And they attack Trump. But here's what's going on. Trump, especially with the Durham report and with what has come out in the last month, with the whole investigation of the so-called, the false, the fraudulent Russian collusion garbage, which is now being shown to be totally, I don't want to say trumped up, but totally fake. It was totally fake. And the mainstream media went along with it. And the FBI played with it. And the Democrats played with it. All these institutions have lost credibility. The mainstream media has lost credibility. Nobody trusts the mainstream media. But we still watch the mainstream media to know what the plutocrats are thinking. So what they're doing is they're attacking us, but they're starting to break their pick. They're starting to lose because they cannot destroy a people unless that people agrees to destroy themselves. And that's what CRT is about. When they say white supremacy, when they say critical race theory, they're saying white people should destroy themselves. You're inherently evil. My God, how we've come from the 1960s in this country. We're saying it's the content of your character that matters and not the color of your skin. Now, all of a sudden, where color of skin and race matters because the big guys, the plutocrats, say it matters. That's why, because they want to remake the people of the United States into a people that are more malleable. They want to create a new identity, which is going to be subservient to the techno-feudalism, as Varoufakis says, Yanis Varoufakis has said, techno-feudalism. They're going to be beholden to these giant corporations because they got no independent identity, no identity at all. That's why they took down the statutes. So my question is to Mr. Youngkin, who won in Virginia, are you going to put the Confederate statutes back up? Because that's the identity of those people, okay? That is cultural, not just cultural misappropriation, that's cultural destruction. That's the same thing ISIS and ISIL did in Iraq when they destroyed all the monuments there. It's the same thing the Taliban allegedly did in Afghanistan when they blew up the Buddhas. Okay, it's the same thing. You've done the same thing in this country, and there's no outcry because you're destroying the identity of a people. And there is a people. Now, that identity needs to be perfected, and that's where religion comes in, particularly the Catholic Church. But we just heard from Roger Mahoney, didn't we? He said, we're not going to change anything. We're a democratic republic. We can't live our faith. So, okay, there we go. So then the Catholic religion. So what you're going to have is the natural law kicking in. And that's what you've got. And now you've got the little guy in the Republican Party. You've got people with an American identity of the Republican Party. Bloomberg News writes about this. Bloomberg News wrote from its May 31st edition of this year. It talked about how the rank and file Republican don't support the business, the established Republicans anymore, because they're big business. And those people made their fortune and kept control through an ideology. And that ideology has been used to attack the American people. And there it does develop this natural law identity among people because you live in a certain area and you have certain relations and you have a certain history and you have a certain culture. And that culture is under attack. And so that is what you're dealing with. And, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is supporting Democrat candidates because the Democrat candidates are going to support the plutocracy. They're going to support their idea of destroying ethnicity, not only in the U.S., but around the globe. And that's why you got wokeness. That's why you got gender identity issues. And that's what the average man and woman is understanding. And coupled with all those cultural issues is the destruction of their livelihood. It's the destruction of their existence. The preamble of the U.S. Constitution talks about, for the benefit of our posterity. Well, if you abort your kids and if you destroy yourself because you say you're evil and you go along with critical race theory, well, you won't have posterity.
But can you help us understand something? If I ask you like a sort of brutal question, I don't know if you can help me to have more clarity on this very issue. That is, who hold the power in America? I mean, we always heard about deep state, we heard, and many times also in Italy, people say, "Oh, you don't think that the real power is the one in the hand of the president of the republic or of the prime minister, but the real power is somewhere else." So, according to your observation, I mean, you are an author, you are a scholar. Who hold the real power in your country?
Well, I have come to the conclusion that it's a troika. There's three main forces. It's the powerful. I call them powerful private interests. I also call them plutocrats because they have the economic resources from a variety of different ways. Some of it's old money, some of it's new money. America always protected and advanced the entrepreneur. The United States Constitution protects economic interests. It's an economic document. It protects the right to hold private property. The government just can't take it. They got to give fair compensation, which in some cases is a lot of money. So, and also too, the sanctity of contracts is protected. You also have the establishment of powerful institutions, which allow for a financial and economic system to function effectively and efficiently. Eswar Pradhat, in his latest book, The Future of Money, writes about this. He actually writes about this. It's a very good book. He describes how those institutions that were created by the American founders were essential to the economic development of this society. And those institutions are created in the U.S. Constitution. So you got the powerful economic interest. The second thing is you got the mainstream media. Okay, the mainstream media works with these interests and basically is out there running interference, telling people what to think, telling people what not to think, demonizing people, and saying, "Well, this is from experts, and this is from the people out there, and this is we're just being an honest broker." And so what you're seeing is the MSM is losing credibility. And then I think the third part of the troika has always been the American intelligence agencies, particularly since World War II. I think these agencies have worked very closely with the American elites, and they have worked to spread this whole idea of liberalism around the world, which is getting pushback in the world right now, according to the latest Yahoo News story. But they've also worked internally now to serve as a political police. We're seeing this with the FBI. We're seeing the FBI function as a political police. In fact, we have a whistleblower that just came out yesterday, which said that Merrick Garland's Justice Department is targeting parents. They're calling them domestic terrorists. You had the FBI go in and raid, is it O'Leary's, of the Veritas news story about the Ashley Biden alleged diary. They went in, they raided his home, they raided his office, and they seized his phone. They seized information that's completely unrelated to this diary, this alleged diary. And they say that this alleged diary was stolen and passed across state lines, and so they can seize everything. So, and then you've got the whole, as I mentioned earlier, the whole Russiagate thing. You've got the intelligence agencies working to advance a definite viewpoint by a definite segment of the population. And so the government agencies, the government authorities, to include the health people, the MSM, are all starting to lose credibility in the eyes of the people. While America is very resilient, this is also very dangerous.
Thank you. Before going on, I want to remember our viewers that we are on YouTube, Ritorno a Itaca. We are on Twitter, on my Twitter account. We are on Facebook, on my fan page in Facebook. If you want to be updated about everything I'm doing and producing as articles, videos, books, you go to Telegram and sign to Aurelio Porfiri channel. So I want to go on with a question that maybe is difficult to answer in a few minutes, but probably you can help at least to have a sense about this. So what is now, not before, now, the role of religion in your country?
Well, you may not like the answer. I think Alexis de Tocqueville in 1835, when he was writing about it, made it pretty clear. I don't think that dynamic's really changed. I think, what he said basically religion is there to support the government. And I agree. I think that's where we are. It is there basically to support. It's changed a little bit over time to support not just the government structure, but it's also there to support the plutocracy and whatever the dominant culture says. That's what religion has been reduced to. And when Roger Mahony makes a statement, I mean, the Catholics are what, a quarter of the population, probably the biggest denomination. When Roger Mahony makes a comment to a Vatican news source that we live in a democratic republic, and I'm paraphrasing, and we live in a democratic republic in the United States where there's separation of church and state, and it's not reasonable, it's not possible to act in accordance with your faith. Well, that's it then. The church is just the Catholic Church is just simply going to be the rubber stamp of whatever the powerful private interests want, and they're going to make that known through the media, through academe, because the moneyed interests pay for academe. Okay, that Bork was talking about academe affects the judiciary, and it does. Yes, that's right. But who pays for academe? The powerful private interests do. Okay, the big money pays for that. They always have. Okay, and there's study after study of this, and the one just came out about Yale about a month ago. And so this is what you have in America. So the religions are basically reduced to just rubber stamping everything and trying to keep people quiet. That's what they do. And it's an unfortunate state of affairs, because the idea, even under John Courtney Murray, with him, the idea was, oh, well, religion will teach the people will now teach will now act in accordance with their religion, and everything will be fine. Well, you had the Supreme Court decisions of Everson from 1947, Lemon versus Kurtzman in 1971, and Lawrence versus Texas in 2003, which basically said, you can listen to people with religious beliefs, but you can't base the laws on any sort of religion or theology. Well, so what does that reduce religion to? That reduces religion down to basically 1 hour a week of feeling good or a social club. That's where it is in America. That's where pluralism leads.
You mentioned before Roger Mahony, that is the former Cardinal of Los Angeles, no? That is the Roger Mahony you refer.
Yes, that is correct. Former Cardinal of Los Angeles, right.
That was disgraced because of his position during the abuses crisis. No, that one.
That's right. However, he was a cardinal. I mean, he had a lot of stars on his shoulder. If you're in the military, powerful man.
Yes, I met him also when I visit your country. Someone brought me to the mass in Los Angeles, and he was there. So they introduced me to him. So I met him briefly. We talked a little about music, and so I remember him. And I want to change a little topic because I grew up in a time where there was every day in the news this kind of confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union. Every day it seems that we have to go to war and that something was going to happen, and then the Soviet Union collapsed. Now the same kind of scenario, it seems to be between United States and China. So how do you think, I know your president, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, met with the Chinese president online. So how do you think is the danger that there can be a real confrontation, it means a war between the two countries? And also I want to ask you, in your opinion, how is different this kind of we call enemy in quote, this enemy, so China, from Soviet Union?
Well, I just read something this morning that the Chinese and the Russians may be working together to make a move. The Chinese to take Taiwan, the Russians to take the Ukraine. I don't know if there's any truth in that. I mean, a lot of the media wants to stir people up to be anti-Chinese and anti-Russian. Clearly, there are regimes in those two countries that limit the power of the plutocrats. There's no doubt about that. And so the plutocrats, the troika that runs America, doesn't like that in any society. They want societies that are based on the liberal model, like America, because that gives them power. That gives, when they say democracy, they're really talking about plutocracy. But at least it gives us the illusion of something. So there's always going to be this pressure. What I think where we are, with China, because you haven't heard much about Russia really, but where we are with China is there's pressure being exerted on the Chinese in the American media, the American press. And I think that what the American leadership wants is a fifth column within China. The Chinese Communist Party is definitely cracking down. And the biggest crackdown was to limit access to 1 hour, I believe a week, that may have been 1 hour a week or 1 hour a day, to video games. Okay. They're limiting access to the internet. See, they're smart. They understand how that's used to corrupt people's minds, their morals, their mentality, and to turn them against their elders and against the administration and against the rulers. They're very smart. The Chinese communists are very smart. They're very ruthless, sure. But so is our leadership. Our leadership is also smart and ruthless, but in a different way. So they don't like it. George Soros wrote an editorial in August that appeared in the Wall Street Journal where he says, we're at war with China. Xi Jinping is destroying the productive capability of the Chinese people. He doesn't care about the Chinese people. He's talking about making a profit. And Chinese stocks have dropped 40 to 50% on Wall Street this year. So what you're seeing is a real pressure against the Chinese leadership. The plutocrats, the global plutocracy now wants to be productive. They want to make money. And so they're just putting pressure on the Chinese. Will there be a war? I don't know. They're going to talk about a war. They're going to talk about conflict. There was always conflict during the Cold War. That's how liberalism spreads. It spreads by conflict. You always find an enemy. You always find some kind of thing to fight. And what you offer primarily to subdue the target is your ideology and, a heck of a lot of explosive ordnance.
No, when you were talking, I was thinking about something that maybe you can help me understand. This program that you are now guest is about, we may say loosely, conservative thinkers. Okay, so sometimes we have the impression that in your country, conservatism equal to Americanism. So that people that are considered conservative, in reality, they are only Americanists. So they are defending the Americanist idea that we already made a program. You were present, and that also get a lot of attention about Americanism, you may remember. So do you think that this impression is correct, so that some so-called conservative, not all of course, but some so-called are only promoting the predominance of the American way of life and not really the conservative ideas? What do you think?
Oh, I think this is a very good question. That's a great question. I can see how you think that, and yes, many American conservatives are promoting liberalism. They're saying liberalism preserves our institutions. You're right, they are. However, American conservatism is undergoing pressure. It's been undergoing pressure for some time now. And what you're seeing are guys like, Patrick Deneen, Vermeulen from Harvard, Sohrab Ahmari, the Josiahs. You've seen a whole bunch of Americans are starting to say, wait a minute, this liberal thing isn't working. Okay, it's hurting the little guy. Okay, so now you're starting to see talk about the natural law. You're starting to see talk about first principles. So there isn't the old idea of conservatism as preserving the American institutions, as preserving liberalism with a capital L, is under a lot of pressure. Where that's going to go, I don't know. But Hadley Arcus wrote, he's a constitutional scholar. He wrote, very old one now, but he wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal, a commentary piece at the end of September 29th. And he said, this originalism is in the Constitution ridiculous. It's truncated originalism to look at the Constitution. You have to look at first principles. Well, where are these guys going with this kind of talk? They're going toward the natural order is where they're going. They're trying to get to the natural order. They're talking in terms of the natural order. That is what is underway within conservative circles now. And it's resonating, or it's motivated by the people on the ground, the little guys pushing back against the plutocrats, the Republicans, the rank and file Republicans, the Trumpistas, if you want to call it. That's what is partly pushing. And people are going to take advantage of it. I just got Bloomberg yesterday. There's an article called The Anti-Woke Investors. Dan Grant and Andy Puzder and I haven't read the article. They're coming up with these ETFs rather, for buying stocks that are not woke America. So they're trying to appeal to the real conservatives. But what they're ultimately saying, and what Catholics are being told in America is, well, if you want to be conservative, you're correct. You have to go with liberalism. It's free speech, which is the wrong approach. That's the wrong approach. Now, while conservatism is under pressure, we're being told the right approach to the left and to the Democrats is liberalism, which is the wrong way to go, because that's going to get you back to where we are. So what is needed is integralism, the natural order, the Catholic confessional state, the divine positive law. You have an ethics-based society. And this is a real moment of opportunity. And it's so sad because I see very few voices chipping in and saying something about it.
And in all this barrage, we may say, well, what is really, you before mentioned that one of the power is the media. And of course, we see that in United States, the media are very pervasive. I mean, they are really great corporation that probably influence also the opinion about the government and about the mentality of the people. So how you define the role of the media in the current situation, and what do you think about what Trump is, I think, going to do, according to what I read, that he want to do a new what is a new social network, or
a new platform, right?
A new platform. So right. You think that this is a good move, or do you think that maybe that cannot be enough? Because I don't really understand also what is the role of Donald Trump in the current situation of the Republican Party in your country, because he is a kind of a really outcast. I mean, he is Donald Trump. I mean, when people judge him, I always say, oh, but you how do you pretend that Donald Trump don't behave as a Donald Trump? I mean, he's Donald Trump. It's like judging our Silvio Berlusconi. Silvio Berlusconi is Silvio Berlusconi. I mean, you have to take everything of him and the whole character. And it's the same for Donald Trump. He's not a politician. he's a businessman, he's a showman in a certain way also, as Berlusconi also. So they are what they are. I mean, they are not politicians. So what do you think?
Well, there's a lot there. You said a lot of things there. He's definitely, yeah. Trump is a showman. He's pushy. He's got a big ego. He's going to develop this platform. He may or may not. He's talking about it. It will bring people together of like minds. It will also help him, in his various ventures, because now he's going to have all this information about people. He'll have a market. That's what all these platforms do. Facebook does, YouTube does. It gathers information about people, and then it's monetized for the shareholders, okay, for the owners of the platform. That's how that works. But we need more than that. That's why I say while Trump can tap into this American identity, I'm not sure he's able to see an end state where what needs to happen happens, which is really to take the power from the plutocracy, to reform the American institutions, to allow the people to develop and to prosper. And that is a plan which Catholicism offers to people. This is something, and I've spoken to this before, that John Cardinal Wright wrote about in 1942 and 1943. He was writing about the different teachings of the Catholic Church, of the popes, to go out and to Catholicize our homelands. He said that is a patriotic duty of all Catholics, to Catholicize the fatherland. And as I'm an American, this is my fatherland. I have a duty to Catholicize, but the Catholics have got to unify, and they have got to say there's a better way of doing this. And that better way of doing this is to inform our policies with this idea of first principles, and also this idea of the divine positive law, that this is a good way. Now, a lot of people are going to push back on that. General Flynn just gave a talk, General Michael Flynn, Irish Catholic boy, from a large family, just gave a talk, retired 3-star Army general, just gave a talk where he said, you know what, we say we're under God, we need one religion. Well, that's the natural order. Well, who ran back at him? CNN attacked him, okay? That's the globalists. The other networks, I didn't see any attack on that. There's an implicit understanding that people know they have to have, at least on an operational level, a common religion, a common set of values. And there has been a common set of values and a common identity of Americans for a very long time. And that's being attacked. That's being attacked through gender politics, through race politics, by getting rid of Columbus Day, putting in new holidays that divide us. That's what that is. That's what's going on. And, the National the National African American Historical Museum had up some time ago the lists of whiteness. Whiteness. It's not. Wait a minute. When we're talking whiteness, what are you talking about? You're talking about an American ethnic identity, is what you're talking about. This is another word, but they put it in racial terms to shame people, to attack people. Okay, that's what they're doing. And there was a society, and it was largely people of Caucasian skin, but it also allowed people of other color skin, of other races, to assimilate. It allowed that. Now, not everybody could, but it did. Okay. And what the Catholics should do, and were supposed to do, but haven't done because of guys like Roger Mahony and Cardinal Gibbons, is they didn't properly come up with a plan to Catholicize the fatherland. We can do it. We got the biggest majority. We just have to have the leadership and the will that's willing to undergo it. So, yeah, Trump is going to use this as an opportunity to help his brand. He'll keep alive this whole idea, of the American identity. But are the American people going to really understand that they're in this spot because of their institutions that the conservative movement, as you correctly said, initially defended as being good? So this is really a moment of change for Americans. This is a moment to protect our people, to really bring out the best in our society, and to effect fundamental change in society.
But we often heard that when here, because you are speaking a lot about the Catholic, of course, field. So we heard here when there are controversies, that involve the Pope or the Vatican or the hierarchy, and the media run the narrative. They say, "Oh, these are people that have behind their back the strong right conservative, American conservative." So the American Catholic conservative, do you think are very strong in your country? Are so strong in your country? Are so rich that they can support the Catholic conservative movement around the world? Or do you think this is only a narrative to justify that there are people that don't like how the things are going in this moment?
Well, do they have faith and do they have sincere leadership? Obviously, in America, every trend, every group of people are subject to manipulation and exploitation. So it's going to require good faith, goodwill. Good faith meaning seeking the truth and having the faith. It's going to take goodwill, wanting to work with people similarly situated, and trying to affect real change. That's going to require sacrifice, because in America, movements get co-opted very quickly. The pro-life movement, it's kind of an interesting study. It really started out with little or nothing, and it's really become quite powerful in America, but it's also been co-opted to an extent. However, that having been said, God's not going to be mocked. That's an important policy. So that's an important part of the Catholic faith is the right to life. And so what you're going to see is this movement is going to continue to influence people in a lot of ways. So you need leadership that has the big vision, the final end in mind, which is the final end not only of mankind and humanity to go to heaven, but also the proper organization of society along at least the natural law, which conservatism in America is trying to get to. It's got to be along the line of the natural law, or the divine positive law is preferable, is the ideal. And they have to unify people, and they have to use those words, and they have to use that identity, and they have to use that reality, and they can't be co-opted. And they're going to be attacked because you have the very powerful private interest. A lot of rich people are paying off the leadership. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And there's no doubt they're probably threatening the leadership too. And the leadership knows if they go a certain way, they're going to get attacked by their own people, because they control the culture.
This is something that I noticed even in recent days when I look in YouTube many videos, and I was seeing some videos that I already, of course, know the organization from Church Militant, and also I saw other videos of the same kind, and I can see that some of the Catholics in your country have this kind of very confrontational attitude with the church. That for us would be kind of, I don't say unthinkable, because we are never so confrontational. I mean, we maybe, especially I live in Rome, I live very near to the Vatican, I grew up under the shadow of the Vatican, if you may say. So of course, may be very critical, and we are, but we are never so confrontational like we are talking with a political organization. Don't you think that maybe being so confrontational is a little farther than what should be allowed? That don't help the goal. I mean, I don't know. What is your opinion?
I think this is a very good observation. I think you bring up an excellent point. This is something I have thought of myself enormously. Catherine of Siena is a doctor of the church. You know her history. She was a Dominican. She would write the Pope in private. She did not publicly castigate him, even though he was living somewhat scandalously, acting somewhat scandalously. She wrote him in private, and she repeated these admonitions over and over again until finally he acted on them. So yes.
No, sorry, not only. I want to add something that I forgot. One day I have a lunch here. I had a lunch here in Rome with a very famous American journalist, Catholic, and very famous in the Catholic world. And they run a media, and they used to. Of course, they are very critical with Pope Francis, and often I saw that they mock Pope Francis. And I told him directly, I say, I can understand your frustration because it's the frustration of many people, but don't you think that destroying the image of the Pope ridiculizing him, like Solalisk, would say that you have to ridiculize the adversary. You all also damage the papacy, not only the Pope but the papacy, and of course we want to preserve the papacy. So when you see these journalists that go there and attack all the bishops, you are all a fool, you are all betrayers. I mean, doing like this, don't put in people a very big mistrust that will never go away. This is my observation, and I'm critical too, but I think that level is probably not what we need.
Well, I think that you bring up a pretty good point, and I think a lot of people. I'm critical of Francis. I'm critical of the prelates because I believe that they have acted in a way that's against the faith, and I think that it's against. If you act against the faith, you act against Christ. You act against the people, and you ultimately hurt your own people. I know that there's an enormous amount of frustration out there. People have tried to talk to the bishops and to the priests privately, and they just get poo-pooed. They just be told to go away. And so that is what brings some of this on. Yes, there should be also an effort to talk to these people privately. And all of these public efforts, especially any apostolate, whatever that apostle is going to gather followers, and it's got to do certain things to gather those followers. Okay, otherwise it's going to fail. And so everything in a liberal society is ultimately turned into some kind of either money-making machine or some kind of machine that is used to advance somebody's ideas. Right, you're absolutely right. So there should absolutely be more pressure put on the Pope, the cardinals, behind closed doors. But tell me, what's been your experience? Have you been able to get in to talk to them? Have you known anybody who's been able to get in to talk to them and say, this is really wrong? This is what I've written. You need to read this and you need to act accordingly. It's hard to believe that these guys don't know what they're doing. It's hard to believe that I think a lot of people believe that if they act this way, if Francis and these other bishops act the way they are, without any sort of reservation, a lot of people think that, well, it's not going to do any good to talk to them.
But I agree when you say that. I agree when you say that sometimes it's difficult to get your message to them, even if I know that, especially now, they know more than they pretend to know, because of course they are very well informed about what the people say. They pretend that they don't know because they don't want to answer, they don't want to open new fronts of confrontation. But my point is, I don't think that doing with this very strong confrontation, you don't only criticize that concrete bishop of the concrete pope or the concrete cardinal, but you are also destroying the image of what a pope is, what a cardinal is, what a priest is, because in doing like this, people will be pushed not to believe any popes, any cardinals, or any priest.
Well, the Catholic Church has become like America, hasn't it? That was the success of the American proposition.
Yeah.
So now the
laity, success, yes.
Yeah, that's right. So now the laity is the constituency, right? That's what happened in the minds of a lot of people. And there's more information that's coming out. A professor just came out with a diplomatic telegram from 1958 talking about how the American government wanted the right person in as Pope. You're right. So what you're seeing is the church being turned into an Americanist organization. Well, the Pope and the bishops can do something about it. I mean, you have to ask your question. You have to ask this question: Are the complaints of a lot of these people unfounded? Are they unfounded?
No. Probably. Of course, there are many problems. I mean, this is very clear. Also to them. I mean, I don't think that they are. Of course, they offer different answer to what we answer, but they know that there are problems, and the problems are also related to the the declining numbers, of people attending the sacraments, or people to professing themselves religious or Catholic. So there are real problems. But my point is, if the answer is this very open confrontation, like they are enemies. So because these also raise more questions. If you think they are sort of criminal, as some people may make you think, so why you remain in the church? But we want to renew the church. I mean, we don't want to make in a way that the church will collapse. And I have this impression. I mean, sometimes I also enjoy to see that there are people that speak clearly, but there is a way, and also to criticize without putting down the institution. I mean, that I think is a sort of risk. And I know that, of course, in your country there are some very good priests, very good Catholics, very good bishops and cardinals, probably, but I can only hear, especially online, the loud voices of those that shout against the scandals, the Pope. Yeah, of course, there is a lot to be criticized. There is a lot, and here also there is an entire front of people that on a daily basis criticize. But I think most of them adopt certain kind of language that do not go to the offensive side. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Well, I mean, I've seen Church Militant. I've looked at what they're saying. I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean by language, the offensive side.
I mean, when you always say, "Oh, the like the bishop now," for example, I don't. I mean, Church Militant only because he's famous, but there are many others, of course. But they say, "Oh, the bishop, they all cover up. They are." Is what I want to say is like the old body of bishops is like that. But if we believe like that, that would be like a mafia clan. And if you believe that, why you have to be Catholic under this kind of people? But I don't believe that every one of them, and as I think also Church Militant does not believe that every one of them, but the way they maybe is a kind of a journalistic, way of presenting things. But I think that to shoot one bird, you are taking everyone. I mean, you know what I want to mean.
Well, it's very dangerous to generalize. You're right, unless you have the evidence. You really have got to come up with evidence. Now, some of these commentators are actually very specific in what they say, and they're actually very specific in who they name, and they have facts, and they're bringing the facts out to the public. So what you got is a lot of really upset people, a lot of betrayed people, Aurelio, in the Catholic Church, and they feel betrayed. They feel betrayed. They're betrayed by their leadership.
Yeah,
I mean, I gotta tell you, I mean, I look back and I look at all the statements that come from Francis and from others, and I mean, I feel a sense of betrayal. I feel, like as though our faith is bad. Why do we have to apologize to the Aztecs? I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, why do we have to apologize to indigenous people? I mean, we converted them. We brought them into the Catholic faith. Our church did. I mean, who's doing the damage here? Is it the people who criticize Francis, or is it Francis who's causing the damage? I think that there's a lot that's come out of the Vatican, a lot that's come from a lot of bishops and cardinals by name. That's very damaging.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And the minute in a way, you got to look at this and say, when Roger Mahoney makes the statement he said the other day, is silence assent? Arguably, it is. If you're silent in the face of statements like that, arguably, it is. And there's a story that goes back, and forgive me, it was around 400 AD, and there was a discussion about Theotokos, the mother of God and or not. And as I recall, the account, there was the bishop got up there and he preached heresy to everyone. And somebody stood up in the crowd and said, "No, you're wrong. You're totally wrong." And then after that, then the bishop, was reprimanded and he was corrected. So there is a history. There is in the church a history of the laity trying to correct the clerics. This is really what we kind of saw during the Middle Ages, to the point it was abused, I admit. But this is kind of what the Holy Roman Emperors did. They said, we got a lot of junk going on here in Germany, and it's coming out of the monasteries, and we're going to clean this up. And so they did, to an extent. They did. And then, they got a little bit overboard, but they did clean it up to an extent. They did do that. So there is this history of the laity correcting the prelates. And if the prelates are willing to listen to our concerns and not demonize people, well, then, I say close the doors and have a conference and act accordingly, But you don't get that sense when you get homilies and when you read stories that are constantly talking, say, about racism or apologizing for religion. At that point, you realize the leadership is not on the same team as you. They got a different mission. And I don't know what would possibly justify some of the things they say, because you're dealing with intelligent people out there in the laity now. So there's a history of the laity correcting the priests. The church is becoming like America, another success of the doctrinal warfare program, and it has been for a while. And the leadership has got all the power. The Catholic leadership has all the power. They just have to have the will to exercise it. And maybe
I want to emphasize that. I have mentioned Church Militant, but I also recognize they do some very good work in other things. But sometimes the tone, to me, it seems a little exaggerated. But maybe it's my own sensitivity, because I mentioned to you we try to be more respectful and prudent, but maybe the people is so exhausted that they cannot hold themselves. And so I want to finish our conversation remembering that you are the author of the book, among other works, but especially the book John Courtney Murray, Time, Life, and the American Proposition. And I want to ask, my last question is this. You are you have spoken about the American conservatism, and we have spoken of the difference between conservatism and Americanism. So if someone outside your country or in your country want to have a suggestion from you of book that can give a good idea of American conservatism, but not Americanism, so what kind of books or book you would suggest?
Okay, well, there are a lot of books that are coming out. And I'm very glad you asked that, because I got a list of them. There's a book that just came out by Christopher Owen. It says, the title of it is, quote, "Heaven Can Indeed Fall, the Life of Wilmore Kendall." Wilmore Kendall was the mentor of Buckley. William Buckley Jr. passed away a few years ago, big conservative. It looks like a good book. I think it looks like it kind of gives people an idea of how conservatism in the U.S. Came to support the institutions of liberalism. You've got a book that is coming out, or just came out, by Amari, called The Unbroken Thread, Discovery of Tradition in the Age of Chaos. Harry Vermeulen has got Common Good Constitutionalism coming out. You've got, these are ideas, these are books that are coming out talking in the context of conservatism, and trying to, I think, remake conservatism in my point of view. I think those are some of the big ones that are new, that are fresh, that are out there, that I apparently right now would recommend. You have to understand, I think there's a fight within conservatism, as I said earlier, and I think that they're trying to get back to first principles. which is the natural law, which is going to be a struggle. But that's what they're trying to do.
Thank you. So I want to thank David Wemhoff for participating in this very lively and interesting conversation. And of course, I hope David Wemhoff will be our guest in our programs in the future. For the moment, I want to thank everyone that have listened to this program. Please subscribe to our channel. Push the like buttons if you like this program, and I will see you on next Sunday for another episode of this Ad Astra rubric. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much, Aurelio. I appreciate it greatly, and thank you to your listening audience. This has been a great discussion, and you give me a lot to think about too. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you to everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye now.